Thank you very much. If you can, Richard Skinner sort of here until 2 o'clock in the morning, and if you can hear any bumps in the background, you know, that sort of thing, it's because we are being joined live by Elvis Costello tonight. Elvis will be playing some songs for us and picking a good portion of tonight's music as well. So we'll get him on the air in a few minutes' time when we've got ourselves together. First, some music though that he didn't choose. Little Willie John. Richard Skinner at night. The man has arrived. Welcome to the studio, Elvis Costello. You're a little bit knackered, I think is the term. At the moment, isn't it? You've been running around a lot.
A lot recently, yes. Very wild tour of European television shows and the like, and then to the United States to do shake a lot of hands and tell them all about my new record, Spike.
They say that this is the worst part of being a pop musician, the need to go out and
I've never done
sell,
such a thing before. It's always been incorporated into band tours.
Sure.
So at the moment, because the tour didn't actually coincide with the release of the record, I had to agree to go out and do it set independently. So it means that they know they have you trapped. I'm the prisoner of Bugs Bunny, you know.
Yes. Have you survived in relative sanity?
Yeah, every day, for every time you get asked the obvious question that you're expecting, well, the obvious 5 questions you might be expecting, there'll be somebody with some really wild question that'll brighten up your day, you know, even if it's something completely bizarre, you know.
All right, we'll try and challenge your mind a little later. I wonder if we will. We've asked you to pick a few records as well.
Absolutely.
And this first one is from that Stay Awake Walt Disney compilation. I mean,
Walt, yes. Well, Hal Wilner's tribute to Walt Disney. I'm not sure what wherever Walt is, I'm not so sure he'd be that pleased about this, but it's a wild treatment of all the music that we heard in the Disney films and cartoons mainly. All kinds of different people are involved. Sun Ra, Tom Waits, Sinead O'Connor, Suzanne Vega, James Taylor.
And I think by and large it works.
I have to say that some of my favourite tracks are by the least likely artists, like James Taylor, who I can't say I've been wild about anything he's done for a long, long while. He sings the song, you know, just sings it beautifully, and there's some great versions of songs, and among them this NRBQ one, Whistle While You Work.
Whistle while you work.
Right down to the last whistle, NRBQ and their interpretation of Whistle While You Work, chosen by Elvis Costello.
Yeah, that's why we were whistling in here, weren't we?
Yes, it makes you whistle along. Your album Spike has done remarkably well. It seems just about everywhere.
Well, I'm very pleased with the reception it's got. You know, I mean, obviously you put a lot of work into something. You'd be disappointed if it didn't get heard because it doesn't sound like everything else on the radio. But then again, I always thought that's why people started out in this business, not to sound like everybody else, that's you know. So it's quite, I'm quite pleased that people seem to have been able to hear, not just say one song from it, but several different songs from it. And, you know, it remains to be seen how far it goes, how many new people it reaches. And I like the idea of some people that haven't not bought the records before maybe hearing it, you know.
You've been in Europe. They don't speak English as their native language there, do they?
No, they have a different word for everything over
there.
They
do, isn't it strange? Do they still understand what you're at, do you think?
Well, obviously you have some wild conversations in some of the interviews, some of the misinterpretations, but no wilder a shot in the dark than some of the things that some of our, you know, crazier journalists come up with over here in the United States. But you do encounter strange cultural phenomena. I was on a program in Sweden where I was on with a millionaire who'd made his money out of self-assembly furniture, who was set the task of assembling some of his own furniture during the show.
And not before time.
Yeah. Yes. And a taped interview with the Queen of Denmark, who turned out to be this rather kind of eccentric old bat who smokes untipped cigarettes and had a rather matty-looking dachshund in her lap and outraged everybody when the dachshund leapt up and licked her by swearing in Swedish. And a guy who looked kind of like a sort of woodsman version of Ronnie Barker, who came handcuffed to 2 gentlemen, and I thought he was an escapologist, and then they tell me he was a credit card fraudster who'd been brought from prison to be interviewed live on the programme.
And now Elvis Costello.
Yeah, I was barely normal enough to be on the programme, and this guy, to make it even worse, he got his guitar out, you know, and he'd written a song in prison, sort of like, oh, then I went down to the Folks Bank and then I ripped them off with my Master Charge and Visa, and he had this sort of like countries, obviously not in English, but
the rough Swedish translation of it.
Yeah, that's the translation that I got from it.
Love it. Do one in English for us now. You're going to do a song from Spike, yeah?
Yeah. This is an unembellished version, except for this guitar I have about me.
One day you're gonna have to face a deep, dark truth from mirror. And And it's gonna tell you things that I still love you too much to say. The sky was just a purple bruise, the ground was iron, and you fell all around the town until you looked the same. The same eyes, the same lips, the same life from your tongue trips. Deep dark truthful mirror. Deep dark truthful mirror. Well, the flagstone streets where the newspaper shouts ring to the boots of roustabouts, and you're never in any doubt. There's something happening somewhere. You chase down the road till your fingers bleed on a fiberglass tumbleweed. You can blow around the town, but it all shuts down the same. The same eyes, the same lips, the same life from your tongue trips. Deep dark truthful mirror. Deep dark truthful mirror. So you pay for the boy in the tiger skin trunks. They set him up on a stool. He falls down like a drum. And you drink till you drool. When it's a story you flatter, you'll stretch him out like a saint. But the canvas that is splattered will be the picture that you never paid. Deep dark truthful mirror. Deep dark truthful mirror. A stripping puppet on a liquid stick gets into it pretty thick. A butterfly drinks a turtle's tears. But how do you know you really need it? As a butterfly feeds on a dead monkey's hand. Jesus wept, he felt abandoned. You're spellbound, baby, there's no doubt in that. Did you ever see a stare like a Persian cat? The same eyes, the same lips, the same life from your tongue trips. Deep dark truthful mirror. Deep dark truthful mirror. Deep dark truthful mirror.
Elvis Costello live with Deep Dark Truthful Mirror. Here's another of his record choices from Jefferson Airplane. Thought that was good. Jefferson Airplane and Greasy Heart, chosen by Elvis Costello tonight. And actually, that's a double CD collection of their stuff, which looks like a real good buy.
Yeah, it's great.
Even got their Levi commercials on it.
Yeah. Who says that corporate manipulation is a new thing?
They didn't sell out in the 60s.
No.
So T-Bone Burnett you've chosen as our next record. A man,
yes.
Obviously with whom you are closely associated.
Yeah, well, as Coward Brothers and as co-producer of 2 albums now, you know, we've done a lot of stuff.
What sort of guy is he? What's he like?
He's about 6'4", and
not the police description. But,
yeah. No, he's a wild man when he wants to be, but he has a good soul for the music and everything. He knows how to get to the heart of the matter, and keep you there, keep reminding you. So he's got a good musical sense and knows about the practical matters of recording pretty well.
Yeah.
But he also reminds you when it's necessary to maybe go and have 3 martinis before doing the take, and also when not to. You know, you've got to know both things. You know, you've got to know how to get in the mood, because the studio is such an unnatural place, you know, for actually conjuring up the feelings that you had completely in another place altogether. You know, you're in your life and you have these ideas and you get moved by things, and then suddenly you're in this little box with wires coming out of it, and you've got to try and make it real, you know, in a way that's probably very easy in front of an audience or something. You know?
Sure. In a sense, it's a great shame you can't pursue your art as and when the whim is with you, isn't it?
Yes, but then think of all the rubbish that you would come out with if that was the case. I mean, it does help to also have the clock ticking. So his sense of the spontaneous and the attention to detail, the combination, the balance, is the thing that makes it a really great producer. And I've been very lucky in the many different ways that I've worked with Nick Lowe. He's got the same thing between knowing how to, you know, set up the scene so that you're going to get the sound you want, but at the same time knowing how to go with the moment. I've been pretty lucky over the years of working with people that know how to get that, because that's the elusive element. You hear so many bands these days where you can tell there's a good song in there somewhere, but it's hidden, you know.
It's all down to discipline, actually, isn't it? Even the discipline to enjoy yourself.
The discipline to be indisciplined is what it is. You know?
Right, here's the man, T-Bone Burnett, and Shake Yourself Loose.
Exactly. It's on MCA, and it was just recorded in about 3 days in the old-fashioned way, just in a room about the size of this, I suppose, really, with all the people playing live.
And this is a small room, I'd like to point out. We're not in a palace here.
It has that intimate sort of mood, and it's got some great stuff on it. Originally, he said, what should I call it? Because there's a song on it called I Remember, and I said, you should call it I Remember T-Bone Burnett.
And he called it T-Bone Burnett.
A coward.
What do you have in common with the man, do you think? You have
everything and nothing, really. I mean, you know, I think we recognise the same thing. It's a bit like talking the same language in different dialects or something. There is some similarity in the way we think about things, and I think that's why we've got on. You know, like I say, I value the same things about songs, and I also don't like to have too much interference or interface, as they say. You know, all that interface stuff, it just gets in the way. You know, why don't you just talk to people? And that's really what he does, you know, with a song like that, and some of his more pop sort of sounding records, they have very funny words to them, and they're just talking straight at people. I mean, there's nothing so difficult about it, you know.
Aren't we lucky, actually, to be living at a time when, shall we say, cultural cross-fertilisation can occur in a very natural way now? I mean, even 30 years ago, for the Beatles to pick up on Motown Records, it was pure fluke. They were living in Liverpool at the time when the records were available, you know.
I have to say that I'm one of these, you know, old-fashioned sort of people, maybe, that thinks there was something quite magical about the rarity of rock and roll when it was only on 3 hours a week. We've got to be careful that we don't get too pleased with ourselves. Having everything all the time doesn't necessarily make it better. I think sometimes it lowers the standard of everything, because we're looking for stuff to fill out all this time we've got to, and all these things to explore, and all these record shops to fill up, and radio programs to fill up even, you know, and there's so much great music still gets overlooked. It's amazing, given the way it used to be when I was a kid, and you really did look forward to hearing things. I recently was listening to some of those Beatles broadcasts, you know.
Oh, the old Lost Beatles tapes.
Yeah, and it's funny to think how, you know, how sort of much it was an event for things to be on the radio, because the rest of the time it was dance band music and sort of, you know.
I still like to think that, for instance, what you're doing now is a little bit of an event as well.
Well, I've been doing this because, as I said before, I was on a promotional trip, which in itself seems like just the opposite of what I do, really. I make records. I see the record business as two separate industries. There's the music making part of it, which stops when you leave the studio, and then there's the selling it part, which obviously I have a vested interest in, because it's my music that they're selling, but it is another separate business, which obviously the record companies have their own ideas about. And my little contribution is to try and bring a little humanity to it by coming and explaining my part of things, and maybe bringing the guitar. And, you know, I've got to the point where I'm not afraid about sort of singing a song, maybe doing it badly, or doing a different version, so that I don't have to have the dry ice and the lighting effects, and the girl singers like exactly the way I did on the record. You know, the record's another matter, you know, just like concerts are all different.
We'll make you do another one in a bit. But,
all right.
Meanwhile, Dolly Parton is...
Dolly Parton and Porter Wagner.
Yeah.
But Porter Wagner of Rubber Room fame. This was her original break into show business. You know, this is before she became a sort of... supermarket tabloid star, you know, and this is a great one. It's from their Burning the Midnight Oil album, which, have you got the record sleeve there?
Yes, I have, yeah.
I think maybe you should describe the picture on the front, don't you, for the listeners, because that's a mental picture you need to keep in mind, you know?
Dolly is sitting in front of a roaring log fire, wearing her best evening gown, with her hair up and staring at her hands in a sort
looking
of
very
thoughtful.
forlorn, yeah, very.
And of course, Porter is looking like the man who's lost his love.
Yeah, well, Burning the Midnight Oil, obviously, and this is the explanation of where it all went wrong. It's called Her and the Car and the Mobile Home Are Gone.
Well, my wife and I were happy.
We just love the ending to that.
Porter Wagner, the godfather of rap, you know.
And they describe Dolly on the album as new country.
Well, I think when this record was made,
1972.
Yeah.
Her and the Car and the Mobile Home.
Mobile Home.
Sorry,
yeah, get the American pronunciation right.
Elvis Costello is live with us on Radio 1 tonight. Another live song, come on, let's
okay.
do
this one I like to do from my my baby cop, who's got me through the last month.
She's a feline tormentor, not any thought of a wife. With a drunk town romantic leads her a miserable life. But when it's full of that beer champagne, she pats paws and claws. And if he should wake up in some terrible dive, and he don't know if he's so, but he's so surprised he's alive. Come on, little honey, let me under your hide. She pats paws and claws. She pats around the bedroom, practicing ways to flirt. He pours another drink and anything in a skirt. Anything wearing a necklace. He thinks up claws, scratching his back. He's going out there, he's not coming back. Ow! She's got spider leg fingers, sharpen whenever he strays. When he carries a bird purse with all of a womanly ways. Oh, while he's drinking his spree, she knows that he never would dare. She could be in pictures, but she wasn't all covered in fur. But he's coming home now and here's the surprise. You wouldn't believe the lies that he tries. She's cutting down to her favorite size. She pats paws and claws. She pats paws and claws. She pats and paws and claws. Oh yeah.
Love it. Elvis Costello live.
Women go.
You were swinging.
I was swinging.
You were.
That's a swinging record. In 1948 that was made, and that's Dave Bartholomew, who was the band leader on all the Fats Domino records, you know.
Oh, right.
And, whew.
I think we ought to name, this is on an American release again, unfortunately. But
You can get it over here, though, because I bought that in England.
Imperial Records, and well annotated, nicely put together.
Yeah. What's the album called? Is the album called The Monkey?
It's called The Monkey.
The Monkey is a marvellous song, which Fabulous Thunderbirds fans might remember it from a few years ago. They did a version on it, and it's...
Well, later this week we'll dig out that one again and play it. We must have it in the library here. You're a bit of a record collector, aren't you? I mean...
Yeah, well, I got to the point where I started looking backwards again. For a few years, I started listening to everything that was new, and I don't hear so much new stuff that makes me really excited like that does, you know?
Richard Thompson said to me once that to go ahead, sometimes you have to go back. In a sense, you have to fill in the gaps and then build on it.
Yeah, there's still no matter how much you think you know about music, there's always something you haven't heard, and it doesn't even have to have any bearing on what you do. You should listen to other stuff anyway, because it puts what you do in some perspective, you know, when you see everything. You don't feel quite so important, you know. Even when you think you're doing good stuff, there's plenty of other stuff out there that'll, you know, you should know about.
You were, on Spike, brought in quite a few pretty big names here, didn't we? I mean, Jim McGuinn's playing guitar on tracks. I mean, that's just off the top of my head. Paul McCartney, of course, a lot of publicity somehow surrounded that.
Well, it's inevitable, I suppose, you know. I mean, everything he does, you know, it's inevitable. He's like a man that's been to the moon and back or something. He's like one of the most famous people, you know, of our time. So anything he does, if he's, you know, it's a big sort of presence to have on the record. But he did it in such a modest, low-key sort of way that I think it's a little unfair to sort of expect it to jump out of the box at you and, you know, knock you over. There's plenty of other contributions which I'm just as delighted with, and I'm sorry that it maybe didn't quite get as much attention paid to them, but it's inevitable. There's a lot of music there, and people will hear it for themselves. I think how much is written about individual players in the long run is not so important as to the contribution they made musically. And
let's not talk directly about Paul, but is it harder working with people who are esteemed as being superstars? Or
not really. It depends. I've never worked with anybody whose own attitude to themselves and music got in the way. Obviously, you have to find your common language, and you have to explain yourself and the song and everything. And sometimes with this way of working on Spike, with starting with a drum machine and maybe just some guide acoustic guitar part, and then asking people to play a part that was going to have to be surrounded by lots of other instruments, was a tall order. You know, they maybe don't know your master plan, you know, as well as you do. So we had to do a little bit of experimentation, but that's after all what the studio's there for. It's a tool as well. You know, it shouldn't tell you what the record sounds like. You should use it. You know. You
were saying that when we were off the air just now, that of the 15 tracks that are on the CD version of the album, those are the 15 tracks you worked on.
Yeah, we worked on all of them equally. I didn't treat any of them, you know, with more favoritism. If some turned out to be more immediate sounding, that's because that was in the writing of the song, not so much in the arrangement.
But so often people will do 30 tracks, you know, and eventually eliminate and cut down and end up with an album. It seems to me
I don't know that so many people have 30 cuts.
This
they
is
might
true.
have some remixes.
I exaggerate for effect, perhaps, but you went in there knowing what you wanted your canvas to be, more or less.
Pretty much, yeah. I had a few other things that I could have worked up if I felt that something wasn't working out the way I wanted it to. But because I had new adventures every day, more or less, with different musicians coming in, after a while it was quite clear to see that there was a balance to be had, and we just had to make sure that each track made the grade, you know, and in some cases it came together very spontaneously. Obviously the stuff done in New Orleans with the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, stuff done in Ireland, it was all very clear that what the record would sound like. Some of the other tracks took a little longer to assemble, and we weren't really sure how the finished thing would sound. You know, things like This Town. Yeah. We had Roger McGuinn on it and nothing else at one point, you know, and then gradually we've pieced together the jigsaw, you know.
Yeah. Let's have a spontaneous song.
A spontaneous little one, yes. Well, this is a...
minor adjustments occurring here.
I wish you'd known me when I was alive. I was a funny fella. The crowd would hoot and holler for more. I wore a drunk's red nose for applause. Oh yes, I was a comical priest with a joke for the flock and a hand of pure fleece, drooling the drink and the lipstick and grease paint down the cardboard front of my dirty dog collar. Now I'm dead, now I'm dead, now I'm dead, now I'm dead, and I'm going on to meet my reward. I was scared, I was scared, I was scared, I was scared. He might have never heard God's comic. So there he was on a waterbed, drinking a cola of a mystery brand, reading an airport novelette, listening to Andrew Lloyd Webber's Requiem. He said before it had really begun, I prefer the one about my son. I've been wading through all of this unbelievable junk and wondering if I should have given the world to the monkeys. Now I'm dead, now I'm dead, now I'm dead, now I'm dead, and I'm going on to meet your reward. Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared? You might have never heard God's comic. I'm gonna take a little trip They say that travel broadens the mind till you can't get your head out the doors. I'm sitting here on the top of the world. I hang around in the darkest night until each beast has gone to bed. And then I say, God bless, and put out the light. While you lie in the dark, afraid to breathe, and you beg and you promise, and you bargain and you plead. Sometimes you confuse me with Santa Claus. It's the big white beard, I suppose. I'm going up to the pole where you folks die of cold. I might be gone for a while if you need me. Now I'm dead, now I'm dead, now I'm dead, now I'm dead. And you're all going on to meet your reward. Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared? You might have never heard, but God's coming.
You know, as I've been singing this song around Europe and America, the story is getting longer and longer and longer and longer. You know, it's about this comedian who dies and goes to heaven. And each time I describe God's waiting room in this song, it just gets longer and longer. And he's got like this blue waterbed full of tropical fish now. And he's got, he's reading these great books, you know, he's reading things like Beyond a Reasonable Doubt by Jeffrey Archer and sort of Rockstar by Danielle Steele, or is it Jackie Collins?
I think it's the Collins one.
Yeah, and Lesson Zero by Bret Easton Ellis. He's reading that.
And obviously he is now listening to Aspects of Love.
Yes, I mean, it doesn't really rhyme that well, but, you know, and he's watching on television, of course, he's got one of those 5-screen televisions like they had in 9.5 Weeks, you know. He's watching 9.5 Weeks because he just loves Mickey Rourke and Kim Basinger, you know, and he's watching Sky, naturally. I mean, God has a satellite dish. You know? That's the thing about God, he can always get tickets for Cats, you know. I mean,
I think I'm going to play a Georgie Fame record.
Yes, with Point of No Return, it's absolutely perfect. That one, isn't it?
It is.
I think
it
still sounds great. I've known that record backwards since it came out.
It says, you know, here that this particular track, written in the 60s, but the message remains the same.
Absolutely, Elvis. Yes. It was on the Fame at Last EP.
Yes.
With Give Me That Wine, I Love the Life I Live, and Get On the Right Track, Baby.
Did you ever see him live?
I've never seen him. I was going to go and see him in Australia. He was playing in Australia when I was down there recently, playing with the Aussie Blue Flames, like a band that they formed down there to back him, and apparently...
Yeah.
But the schedule didn't work out for him.
I've seen the old videos, and he was great live performer.
He's one of my favourites.
Undoubtedly. Another...
still really great, I believe, as well. You know, still a great voice. And like,
good.
People should check him out. He's great.
You worked with Roy Orbison just before his untimely death. Didn't you? Because you wrote a song for his album.
Yeah, well, I reworked a song of mine which was written with him in mind.
Yeah.
Although at the time he wasn't obviously making records, and then he started. He did the In Dreams album, the remakes of all his old stuff, because he's had a lot of bad fortune with the record business, with a lot of his materials being tied up in legal nonsense. And then they started work on the Mystery Girl album, which obviously everybody knows now. And T-Bone Burnett was doing a couple of the productions, and he asked if I had a song. So I reworked the song The Comedians, rewrote the lyrics and worked on the music a little bit more to make it a bit more suitable for him. And then I was invited to be on the Black and White Night, which I think quite a few people saw.
Yes, a very successful TV
show. Tremendously good fun to do, you know, and hard work, you know. I mean, obviously the finished product looks very kind of glossy and lots of girls tossing their hair back and saying, oh, am I on camera in the audience and things like that. The enthusiasm of the band, I think, is transparent on the programme, and tremendous testimony of how good he actually was at even doing the songs that he'd been singing for 20-odd years, you know. Yeah.
Let's not dwell on his passing. Let's actually listen to him in good form here. This is actually a weird period you've chosen from 65 here.
Yeah, this is just, this has got the Crawling Back is the hit track off this, but it wasn't a big hit. But this is, I think, an even better song, which probably I think hardly anybody knows. It's called It Wasn't Very Long Ago.
Chosen by Elvis Costello, who is with us live in the studio tonight. On your album Spike, there's, to me, the first I've heard of the Dirty Dozen Brass Band. Now, should I have heard of them a lot before?
I think it's inevitable that almost an entirely instrumental group are going to have a little difficulty getting over to, some people, because they tend to get shoved into the jazz programs. Asking the musical question, who's bad? Michael.
I have never, yes, I've never heard
that is a 60-pound piece of brass serpent. How he does that, I don't know, because he really keeps it going all the time, isn't
a long way from the Temperance 7.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right, we have one more live song, and let's discuss a bit before we do. The whole thing is 10 years now since Margaret Thatcher was elected.
Unfortunately,
Premier.
Yes, that's the case.
And I know you have views about,
everybody's entitled. That's one of the few things we have left, is that you can still have them. They don't take you out and shoot you, but... and there's many worse places in the world, Sorry?
What do you think of Britain today? I mean,
I think there's a lot of problems. If you look anywhere, there's a lot of problems, and I think we've got to question them. You've got to question yourself, and I'm not a lone voice in the wilderness, and there's plenty of people who've got strong opinions to the contrary to the one, either inside politics, which is in itself a little industry of its own, self-perpetuating little club a lot of the time, and I just express my feelings. I don't really think of these songs that I write as political. People put interpretation of them being political because they're just emotional feelings that you get, and that's what I do for a living. My expression is to write songs. I may be lucky that way, and or also a little privilege. I can go on television and sing them and even swear on television, because
I understand.
Well, apparently, I'm very surprised I'm here. According to the Sun newspaper, I'm banned from the BBC. I was in America and they ran a piece saying that live on television, well, that's an amazing piece of time travel, because it was recorded 3 weeks before that I'd gone on. And I was just asked a question. It's not my way to want to come off like some inarticulate thug, but I just got angry and said a word that I maybe shouldn't have done. And, in the pursuance of journalistic accuracy, they ran it, and of course, let's face it, you can walk down any street in any town in England, or Scotland, or Wales, or Ireland, and hear 8-year-olds saying words worse than that, let alone in the public bar, in conversations about football, politics, or any other matters of humanity. So it's somewhat hypocritical, given the nature of the Sun newspaper's moral kind of makeup. And, they ran one of those very funny things that should only be read in a what the papers say voice, where they said, a spokesman for the BBC said, well, it caused a bit of a jolly old stink round here, but Costello says, I stand by every word. So anyway, I stand by every word.
And you're here tonight.
Yes.
Do the song then, here we go.
I saw a newspaper picture from the political campaign. A woman was kissing a child who was obviously in pain. She spills with compassion as that young child's face in her hand she grips. Can you imagine all that greed and avarice coming down on that child's lips? Well, I hope I don't die too soon. I pray the Lord my soul to save. Yes, I'll be a good boy. I'm trying so hard to behave, because there's one thing I know: I'd like to live long enough to savor. That's when they finally put you in the ground. I'll stand on your grave and tramp the dirt down. When England was the whore of the world, Margaret was her madam, and the future looked as bright and as clear as the black tarmac Adam. Well, I hope that she sleeps well at night, isn't haunted by every tiny detail. When she held that lovely face in her hands, all she thought of was betrayal. And now the cynical ones say that it all ends the same in the long run. Try telling that to the desperate father who just squeezed the life from his only son. And how it's only voices in your head and dreams you've never dreamt. Try telling him the subtle difference between justice and contempt. Try telling me she isn't angry with this pitiful discontent when they flaunt it in your face as you line up for punishment, and then expect you to say thank you, straighten up, look proud and pleased, because you've only got the symptoms, you haven't got the full disease. Just like a schoolboy's head's like a tin can, filled up with dreams, then poured down the drain. Try telling that to the boys on both sides, being blown to bits or beaten and maimed. Who takes all the glory, none of the shame. Well, I hope you live long now. I pray the Lord your soul to keep. I think I'll be going before we fold our arms and start to weep. I never thought for a moment that human life could be so cheap. But when they finally put you in the ground, they'll stand there laughing and tramp the dirt down.
Elvis Costello live with Tramp the Dirt Down. And Elvis, thanks for being here tonight. Good luck on the tour.
Thank you.
Nighttime Radio 1 with...
Time you get asked the obvious question that you're expecting, well, the obvious 5 questions you might be expecting, there'll be somebody with some really wild question that'll brighten up your day, you know, even if it's something completely bizarre, you know.
All right, we'll try and challenge your mind a little later. I wonder if we will. We've asked you to pick a few records as well.
Absolutely.
And this first one is from that Stay Awake Walt Disney compilation. I mean,
yes, well, Hal Wilner's tribute to Walt Disney. I'm not sure what wherever Walt is, I'm not so sure he'd be that pleased about this, but it's a wild treatment of all the music that we heard in the Disney films and cartoons mainly. All kinds of different people are involved. Sun Ra, Tom Waits, Sinead O'Connor, Suzanne Vega, James Taylor.
And I think by and large it works.
I have to say that some of my favourite tracks are by the least likely artists, like James Taylor, who I can't say I've been wild about anything he's done for a long, long while. He sings the song, you know, just sings it beautifully, and there's some great versions of songs, and among them this NRBQ one, Whistle While You Work.
Whistle while you work, whistle while you work, cheerfully together.
It states that you do encounter strange cultural phenomena. I was on a program in Sweden where I was on with a millionaire who'd made his money out of self-assembly furniture, who was set the task of assembling some of his own furniture during the show.
And not before time.
Yeah.
Yes.
And a taped interview with the Queen of Denmark, who turned out to be this rather kind of eccentric old bat who smokes untipped cigarettes and had a rather matty-looking dachshund in her lap and outraged everybody when the dachshund leapt up and licked her by swearing in Swedish. And a guy who looked kind of like a sort of woodsman version of Ronnie Barker, who came handcuffed to two gentlemen, and I thought he was an escapologist, and then they tell me he was a credit card fraudster who'd been brought from prison to be interviewed live on the programme.
And now Elvis Costello.
Yeah, I was barely normal enough to be on the programme, and this guy, to make it even worse, he got his guitar out, you know, and he'd written a song in prison, sort of like oh, then I went down to the Folks Bank and then I ripped them off with my Master Charge and Visa, and it had this sort of like countries, obviously not in English, but
Thank you very much, if you can. Richard Skinner sort of here until 2 o'clock in the morning, and if you can hear any bumps in the background, you know, that sort of thing, it's because we are being joined live by Elvis Costello tonight. Elvis will be playing some songs for us and picking a good portion of tonight's music as well, so we'll get him on the air in a few minutes' time when we've got ourselves together. First, some music, though, that he didn't choose, Little Willie John. Richard Skinner at night. The man has arrived. Welcome to the studio, Elvis Costello. You're a little bit knackered, I think is the term, at the moment, isn't it? You've been running around a lot.
A lot recently, yes. Very wild tour of European television shows and the like, and then to the United States to do shake a lot of hands and tell them all about my new record, Spike.
They say that this is the worst part of being a pop musician, the need to go out and
I've never done
sell,
such a thing before. It's always been incorporated into band tours.
Sure.
So at the moment, because the tour didn't actually coincide with the release of the record, I had to agree to go out and do it set independently. So it means that they know they have you trapped. I'm the prisoner of Bugs Bunny, you know.
Yes. Have you survived in relative sanity?
Yeah, every day, for every...
The rough translation of it.
Yeah, that's the translation that I got from it.
Love it. Do one in English for us now. You're going to do a song from Spike, yeah?
Yeah, this is an unembellished version, except for this guitar I have about me.
One day you're gonna have to face a deep, dark, truthful mirror, and it's gonna tell you things that I still love you too much to say. The sky was just a purple bruise, the ground was iron, and you fell all around the town until you looked the same. The same eyes, the same lips, the same life from guitar trips. Deep dark truth for mirror. Deep dark truth for mirror.
Right down to the last whistle, NRBQ and their interpretation of Whistle While You Work, chosen by Elvis Costello.
Yeah, that's why we were whistling in here, weren't we?
Yes, it makes you whistle at all. Your album Spike has done remarkably well. It seems just about everywhere.
Well, I'm very pleased with the reception it's got. You know, I mean, obviously you put a lot of work into something. You'd be disappointed if it didn't get heard because it doesn't sound like everything else on the radio. But then again, I always thought that's why people started out in this business, not to sound like everybody else. That's you
right.
know. So it's quite. I'm quite pleased that people seem to be able to hear not just say one song from it, but several different songs from it, and you know, it remains to be seen how far it goes, how many new people it reaches. I like the idea of some people that haven't not bought the records before maybe hearing it, you know.
You've been in Europe. They don't speak English as their native language there, do they?
No, they have a different word for everything over
there. They do,
yeah.
Isn't it strange? Do they still understand what you're at, do you think?
Well, obviously you have some wild conversations in some of the interviews, some of the misinterpretations, but no wilder a shot in the dark than some of the things that some of our, you know, crazier journalists come up with over here and in the United